Hey everyone, it's Robert. It is 1 o'clock, and we are now on to part 2 of Tech Tuesday. Woo! So we're here. We are now going to be talking Command 101. If you haven't attended a Command 101 session before, what we do here is we start every month, we restart the Command 101 series, and we go through basically contact to contract. And we are in the third slash fourth week of the month here because I don't do we even have anything next week? What does the calendar look like? I don't know if we're gonna finish it up today or if we're gonna have some time next week. I don't know what the dates are. Basically, I'm completely lost. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover working with documents today. So we're gonna talk about the Documents tab in Command, and it's gonna branch off into a little bit of Docusign, which we covered this morning on split and combined documents and stuff like that. And it's also gonna talk about the commissions slash getting paid portion for the MCA and compliance. So we're focused on the Documents tab today. We're gonna be talking a lot about that and how to get the most out of it, how to streamline your processes, and how to make it so that not only is compliance gonna be easy for you to get through, but getting paid is going to be easy. We want to make that as pleasant and as seamless as possible. And in doing so, keep in mind that we did have Tristan on this morning in the quick start, and he was really helpful getting us understanding the process for the MCA, the compliance, not the compliance, the commission side of getting paid. And as you probably are aware, they were coming up on the end of the month, so transmittal is just about to start. So don't bother calling them because they're swamped. So that's what we're here for, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So thank you very much for joining us, everyone. If you're in the Zoom room, which the two of you, I do see you there. Don't think you're hiding from me. If you have any questions, wave your hands frantically in the air, and if that doesn't work, you can put something in the chat window, and I will definitely respond to you guys with a nod and no answers, but just at least I'll acknowledge that you're waving your hands around. So we are going to start by getting a transaction ready. And as always, I say this and you probably know it's coming. We're going to create a transaction. So to create a transaction, step one, you go to your contacts, not to the opportunities, but to the contacts area. Step two, find your contact. Find the person who is the primary signer on the transaction. And when I say primary, I don't mean the person who is necessarily going to be number one on the contract. What I mean is the person who's going to fill out the contract. So the primary signer. So in this case, I've got Jackie Astuto here. So I've found her. If she doesn't exist in your system yet, of course, you can create the contact with the add contact box. So now that we've located our contact for our primary signer, that is going to be the number one signer position on the document. When we're inside here, we want to make sure that we have all the information for this client. All the information being phone number, email, physical addresses, things that we may need throughout the process of working with them on our contracts. So that can all be done here in the edit contact area on the left-hand side. So you make sure that's all in order. Once that is, you come over to the right-hand side into the activities area or the timeline, and you're going to click on opportunities. Opportunities are where all of the opportunities live for this contact. So we're talking about managing an opportunity for one contact. If you want to start talking about managing multiple opportunities for your team or your business as a whole, there's an opportunities page for that. But we're always going to manage the single opportunity from here. So we go to the opportunities tab inside the contact, and then we're going to create the opportunity. So we click on create opportunity, the button on the right-hand side, and the dialog box pops up. We have to select certain things, so we got to fill it out properly. So we'll choose the opportunity type. And in this case, I'll do a listing, nice and simple. And you can see that as soon as I choose the opportunity type, the client is already lit up. The client we already know is Jackie Astuto because we created the opportunity from the contact. The opportunity name is already loading up with the contact's first name, the type of contact, or the type of opportunity it is, which is the listing opportunity. And all we have to add in the case of a listing specifically is the property address. So we were talking with Tristan this morning. So the idea is the who, what, where. Who is Jackie Astuto. The listing is the type, the what, and the where is where that transaction or where the property is. That's how your opportunities are labeled. Do not forget to put the address into this opportunity. It makes it so much easier. Yeah, I'm going to reach back to those who remember. It makes it so much more interesting for the listener. See if you guys suss out what movie that one's from. So always the person, place, or the person, the what, and the thing. So who, what, where. All right, now that we got that, we'll go down to our commission rate and we'll put our commission rate in, and we are ready to create the transaction. So we create our opportunity, and yes, indeed, it is right here. So at this point, the transaction or the opportunity is essentially the shell of it is created. And this class being focused on documentation and managing that documentation, everything that we're about to do now impacts the documentation. Okay, everything that we do has some bearing on the documents and the follow through all the way through to getting paid. So from here on out, write this down. So we open the opportunity by clicking on it, and the opportunity page opens up and it lands us on the details page. So on the details page, let's look at the tabs we have across here so that we know where we're going. We have the details tab, we have the seller profile tab, and that is directly related to whether or not this person is connected to your website or your consumer app, okay? So if they are not connected to your consumer app or your website, this doesn't matter. The next tab over is documents. This is where you're going to be living. This is your home for the next however long this transaction takes place. That's the tab you're going to be on. The offers and commissions is once the transaction is complete, you will create an offer and then submit your commissions. The notes area is literally a notes area for the transaction. And you should really think about using this. Notes for yourself, notes for anything that's going on with the transaction. If you are on a team and you are working on a transaction together, the notes area becomes super important. And then the timeline. If you're ever wondering, when did I do this? Did I do it at all? You can go to the timeline and you can actually see all of the events since the creation of the opportunity that have transpired. And so in my case, in 1 second, I already have this much information in the timeline. It's already done because this is all part of the history of the transaction. So we have all that good stuff, but we're going to focus on the details to start. So on the details, we have the information that we'd already entered into the form when we created it. And much of that information is going to be used on the documentation. How much? I'll show you. So when we go to Keller Williams answers, how about our answers? There we go. That's what I'm looking for. If we go to answers.kw.com, that's what I'm looking for. Answers.kw.com. This is your absolute help resource. And I'm going to give away my biggest secret here because it's not a secret. I use this when somebody's got a question for me. If you see me typing in the background while we're talking, I'm usually looking something up here. This is the absolute source of truth. And there's a lot of great articles in here, a lot, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles. So if you're ever looking for an answer, it's answers.kw.com. One of the answers that we're looking for is how and what information syncs to Docusign. So all I did was type in sync doc, and the first article that comes up, sync opportunity details with the connected Docusign room or .loop loop. Literally, answers at your fingertips. I'm going to put this article into the chat, and I'm also going to put this article. And by any chance, can I do a buyer? Tiffany wants me to do a buyer. Well, you're fine. I'll make you a buyer opportunity. All right. So we're going to put this in the chat. There we go with that. You guys can grab that out of the chat. Natasha, question rate is the rate that you are listing agent receiving after discussing with the client, and you agree on a 60% rate and split. Okay, Natasha. Very simply, let's answer 2 questions here. I'm going to go back. Well, actually, I'm going to leave the screen here. We'll come back and we'll answer both of your questions, not questions, but both of your comments here. Number 1, when you are working on a transaction, the only thing, and Tristan was talking about that this morning, the only thing Tristan cares about is getting you paid. End of story. So in that case, Whenever you're putting a commission rate into the transaction, you're putting what you expect your check to you to be based on. You are not putting in somebody else's number. You don't put in 6 if you're splitting it. If you're getting 3%, you put 3% in there. Whatever you're getting, whatever you expect the check to be written for, that's the number that you place in there. Okay. Now, as far as the other side of the deal is concerned, that's not what you're entering. You're only entering your side of the deal. So keep that in mind. Okay. So now that we have that, let's go back to create ourselves another transaction, and we're going to do it as a buyer. So check this out. I created a transaction, and for the moment, we're going to say this was an oops. Maybe I did a listing and it should have been a buyer. If we don't need this transaction anymore, we can come over here and we have two choices. We can mark this opportunity as lost, or we can actually just archive this opportunity. So since we're here and since we're going to do this, let's understand the difference between the two. A lost opportunity is money that you lost. That is money that didn't happen because the buyer backed out, the seller backed out, and nothing came of it. It didn't get rolled into some other kind of version of itself as a deal. It just died. That money that is lost on this deal, one side or the other, is technically part of your business. You had an opportunity to make some money and it didn't happen. From a reporting perspective, losing the deal keeps your system honest as to what your business did or did not do. This is very different from an oopsie situation where, oh no, that's the wrong opportunity. You don't want to mark that as lost because you didn't lose it. It was never anything real to begin with. What you can do is mark it as an archive, and you can archive that opportunity. To archive an opportunity is in a different place, and to be honest with you, I'm not going to go through that now because it's going to take me too far to the left. If you want information on archiving an opportunity, you can actually jump into the answers.kw.com and type in archive opportunity. But for now, we're going to just leave that aside, and we're going to go back in this. I'm still in the details tab here. In the details area, I'm going to go back to my contact, Jackie Astuto, so that I can create an opportunity for a buyer. It takes me right back to the very beginning of our conversation, and I can come over here to opportunities, and I can create an opportunity, and I will select buyer this time. Now, the difference between a buyer opportunity and a listing is when you have a buyer and you're creating the opportunity, there's a very good chance that you don't have an address yet. You don't have a property because they're just getting started. If you're creating this opportunity and the buyers approached you and said, I want that house, then you know it. Then go ahead and put the address in there. But if that's not the case, if they're like, hey, I want you to help me buy a house, and you're like, where do you want to buy? And you're like, I don't know. Then leave this blank. It's a TBD. But don't forget about it because you're going to need this later anyway. Okay. So we'll go ahead and create a buyer opportunity. We'll put a commission rate down here of 3%. And you may have noticed that because it's a buyer opportunity, there's a new box here. Time frame. Time frame, 1 to 3 months. Let's say 1 month. Estimated close date. Let's say that it's going to be, March. I'll put it in March 19th. That is the slight changes between a listing opportunity and a buying opportunity just in this dialogue alone. So we'll go ahead and click create. Now, here we are. By the way, you'll notice that we have our green home icon with a $sign, I believe that is. Yeah, it's really small, indicating a listing. And then we have the red house with an arrow moving in, indicating buyer. So you always can tell which ones are which. So here's my buyer opportunity. You good, Tiff? All right. So now we have that. And on this information, as I started to say, when we looked at the detail, we don't even have all the information because the dialog box didn't give us enough to put in there. Because we want our documentation to be as good as possible, we're going to start by editing the details of this opportunity. So if there's more in this dialog box than there was when we created the opportunity. So look what we got here. We've got the market center is locked out because the opportunity has already been created. We could change the opportunity name so we could add in the property address when we get it. Custom tags. If we want to organize our business into tags for opportunities, we can do that. The deal owner can't be changed. It's the person who created the deal who owns the deal. If it's a team, it's the rainmaker owns the deal. You own the opportunity. The contact name, the co-buyer, if any, we can add a co-buyer here. The opportunity, phase, and stage, which is where you're at in the opportunity. Now, this is something where eventually you're going to mark this thing as closed. And when you do, you're going to put a closed date in here. The time frame, came over from the opportunity dialog. The estimated close date came over. What is the appointment scheduled? This one comes up a lot. Robert, what is the difference between appointment scheduled and appointment date? And it comes down to this. Command is a very powerful CRM. And in doing so, and in being such, it allows you to track information to give you a very good picture of your business. And one of those metrics is when you schedule an appointment, tracking the date that when you're talking on the phone, you say, Mr. Smith, how would you like it if I came over Friday afternoon? And they say yes. It's Wednesday right now. You put in Wednesday as the date that you scheduled the opportunity. This is the date that you created. Actually, it's Tuesday. Tuesday. I'll put Tuesday in. Tuesday is the date that you scheduled the appointment. Friday is the date of the appointment. Okay. The agreement 1. Hopefully that's going to be Friday the 25th, because this is what we're talking about, is when did they decide to sign the agreements and become your client? The 25th. If not, you put the date that they decided to sign and go to work with you. Now, on the next two things, this has to do with the contract of the sale or the purchase of the home for the buyer or seller's end. So the contract date is the date that you signed a deal. And now remember, we are on a buying opportunity right now. So that means when we are on a buying opportunity, what is the date of the contract that the buyers are going to sign the contract? So the 25th, they became my client. These days, that can go by pretty quickly. Let's say it's going to be March 4th, the next Friday. They found a house. They found everything they want. They went under contract on the house on Friday the 4th. The close date is happening fast as well. Let's say they're closing on the 31st. Okay. So, and by the way, we don't want to put a close date in here because putting a close date in this dialog box implies that we're ready to go, as opposed to an estimated close date. So that close date is going to be, I'm going to cancel this dialog box really quick because I don't want to save that date. So I'll come back in here really quickly and put that other information in. So it's scheduled 22, appointment date 25, agreement 1, the 25th, the contract date. We'll say it's going to be March 4th, and we'll leave the close date open because we'll close it when it closes. The commission rate, the finance type option. Is it conventional? Is it FHA, VA? We have that option here as well. Remember what I was saying about all of the stuff that we do moving forward has an impact on all of the documentation. Everything that we're doing here has an impact. So we'll go ahead and put all that information. We'll save it up. So D, your question is, once a date is entered, you can't change it. That is not true for everything that I showed you except the close date. The close date is the one thing that goes closed. All right, done. Everything else is editable, but because I put the close date in there, I shouldn't have, because that kind of seals the deal. All right, good question. Okay, so now that I've done all that goodness, we have everything that we needed. Actually, I'm going to put one more piece in here. I'm going to come back in, and I forgot to add the budget. I'm going to put my budget of $500,000. So check it out. All the goodness. $500,000, the 3%, there's my commission. There's all the dates except for the closing date. All of this is going to play into what synchronizes with dot loop and Docusign and how the documents themselves fill out. So let's talk about this. Where does info pull from when you are synchronizing your Docusign dot loop room? Number one, don't even look at that. If you do not create the Docusign or dot loop room from that button, then all bets are off. Nothing synchronizes with .loop or Docusign unless you use this button. Okay, that's number one. If you synchronize and you create the opportunity correctly, like we're about to show you, then from your Keller Williams White Pages profile, it will pull your agent information. It'll put it on the contract. From the opportunity that you select for the buying opportunity, or if it's a listing, the information about that attached listing, buy or sell, will be pulled in from the MLS. All of this information will be automatically added to all of your documentation. When you are in the offer stage and you are submitting for your commissions, the seller information, the buyer information, the close dates, the actual closing date, and the closing price will synchronize back to Docusign and .loop as well. So your documentation in Docusign and .loop is complete all the way through the closing of the transaction. So these areas, all of that information is going to synchronize so you don't have to enter it. And because of that, everything that we just did on the details tab and everything that we're about to do matters. It'll save you time. All right, so we got all our details done. We're happy with that. We're not worrying with the buyer profile, which is our consumer connection. We're going to go straight into the documents tab. So blank form here. We have a blank object to start off with. We got a nice canvas. We have our buyer. We are on the documents tab and we are about to engage in commerce with this person. So we need a checklist of documents to make sure that we are checking off the right documents for this type of transaction. Well, we've got you covered. My particular example here, I'm going to go ahead and say that the person is going to buy. I'll tell you what, Tiffany, I'm going to give you a bone here. I'm going to say that they're going to do a main buyer. So I've got a main buyer. Now, full disclosure here, I typically work with all of the New Hampshire stuff only because I'm not an agent, number one, so I don't know the differences in all those things. And number two, it's easy because everything's in here. So there's going to be some things that you're going to be seeing here that are a little bit different if you're a New Hampshire agent. So normally I deal with the New Hampshire stuff, but we'll go with the main one, and it's a little different. Okay, so I choose the checklist, and the checklist comes to me in 3 folders: a consultation folder, an under contract folder, and a closed folder. And with each one highlighted on the right hand side, there's going to be a list of the documents that you're going to be that are going to be required for each of those stages of this transaction. So on the consultation stage, there are 10 potential documents required, and they're listed right up there at the top, 10. And I say potential because not all of these are required, but there are 10 documents that could be used in this form. Now, let's be very clear. This is not to say that there are 10 documents according to the state of Maine and the laws in Maine. What this means is that there are 10 items on this checklist. Okay? And in 10 items on the checklist, there are 4 required items: the brokerage relationship form, the exclusive buyer representation, the KWCLM wire fraud, which is not a main form, the KWCLM general disclosures. So 2 required forms and then 2 required forms that are just for our market center. Now that's just the one folder. In the under contract folder, there is 45 checklist items. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 required items. Is that the number? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's it. Do you need all 45? Probably not. That's why there's the difference between required, conditional, and optional. Optionals are way down at the bottom. And optionals include basically you being able to keep documentation all in one place without having to worry about them being scattered in multiple folders across multiple computers. So these are slots that you can use. And here's the best part. If in this area you look in here for all 45 documents and you're holding in your hand a document that does not fit into any of these boxes, and you're like, you know what? I want to put this with this transaction, but there's no place for me to put it. No problem. In addition to all of the predetermined checklist items, there is the ability to add your own customized folder. And in that folder, you can put anything. Oh, Natasha, wonderful question. This is probably one of the most important ones that we have. How do we know whether to include conditional docs or optional docs? The optional is going to be based on what you see down there. For example, if you come down here, you have inspection reports. Do you want to put them in here? Great. If not, you can store them in a system you want. Optionals kind of like, we gave you some extra slots there. Conditionals literally have conditions. So every one of the conditional documents has a little I next to the conditional. And it says, for this document to be used, the condition is, it is required if any of these situations pertain to the transaction or unrepresented seller. So this is unrepresented seller, copy of death certificate or divorce decree. So it's conditional. And if it is a situation where those statements, copy of death certificate or divorce decree, impact this transaction, then you need them in there. So copy of POA, trust, or LLC, same thing. If this situation exists, you need the document. So as you go through here and look at this, you'll see that every one of those conditionals has an I. So condition required if property is a condo. So if you're working on a condo, you need the condominium addendum. So if you have any questions about those particular conditional statements, remember, the best way to get answers to that is on Monday at 1 p.m. on the Ask the Broker session with Jason Westcott or Jennifer, our brokers. So either one of those two can answer that. Fridays, they have Back to Basics. You can pop in there. And on Thursday nights at 6 p.m., you can pop in there. All of that is on your training calendar. T, can we put dates on when inspection is due, deposit is due? That is not a question for me. That is most decidedly a real estate question, and you should reach the broker for that. Okay? So I can't answer that one for you because I don't know. All right. So now that we have an understanding that each of these three folders has their own set of documents, we are now ready to start putting the documents together in Dotloop or Docusign, and we can then begin the process of getting them signed and bringing them back. So let's take a look at the next steps here. Now that we've got this dialed in, we need to create our transaction. Now, for those of you who are using Dotloop, we don't do Dotloop sessions here in the trainings because Gary. So we show Docusign. If you want to learn how to use Dotloop and you have questions about Dotloop, I can talk to you and we can go some things. But we will be using Docusign, but I'm not teaching you Docusign here. This is not about using Docusign as your tool. This is about knowing how to make this happen. So we're going to just create our transaction. So I'm going to click my Start a Transaction button. Now I do have both on my system. You're probably going to have one or the other. I'm going to choose Docusign. And as soon as I do this, as soon as I click this button, boom, it's going to start a Docusign room. So once I log in, and it's going to create the room based on all of the information that we just put into that Details tab and the checklist and everything. So this situation is very unique here. So Tiffany, you had me create for you a buying transaction and I chose to do it for Maine. So something different and unique happens here that's very important to understand. When we created the checklist, none of the items that are required in the checklist here are being pulled into the Docusign room automatically. So there's no documents that got preloaded because of the type of transaction that we had, because it's Maine. Maine, the document transactions come from zip forms. And this applies whether you're using Dotloop or Docusign. So in Maine transactions, you will need to make sure your zip forms account is in good standing, connected, and running. For those connections, if you need assistance to make sure zip forms is connected and it does not connect to Dotloop, it only connects to Docusign. So that this is a main thing. This has nothing to do with KW, by the way. It frustrates the heck out of us because it creates two different workflows for everybody involved. So main Docusign has access to zip forms. Loop does not, but you have access to zip forms on your own. Okay. So because of that, I'm going to pause this Docusign process because now we're getting 2 steps away from the document in command. We're getting too far away. But that process would be getting the forms from zip forms for Docusign, or logging into zip forms if you're a .loop user, getting the forms filled out and getting them signed and bringing them back. Now I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to bring in a form for the KW local market center. So I'm going to bring in a form here and it's going to be wire, just because I know that I can use Keller Williams forms, KW forms, that are regardless of zip forms. So now doing that allows me to work with the forms from the KW library, and now I can finish what I want to show you here. Okay. And as a matter of fact, while I do that, I'm going to bring another document in here. There we go. So I just brought in a PDF to here. Okay. So now that we have that kind of squared away, in command to manage the documents that are moving back and forth between Docusign or .loop and the documents that we need here, we have to understand that there has been some changes recently. And if you are watching this as an existing agent, you either have already figured it out or you're frustrated with it and haven't figured it out. And that is that there is now a requirement in command for you to explicitly identify in which folder your documents are coming from if you're using Docusign. Okay. And the same thing for .loop. What that means is when you say that you've got a room connected, you've got a loop connected, whatever, you still need to specify for the system where those files are. And that is the working folder. So let me come back over to Docusign for a moment and show you what's going on. By default in Docusign, you're given a folder. This is called the Room Docs folder. You didn't make it, it was automatic. And inside that Room Docs folder, most people live their entire lives. They don't even know that you can actually use other folders, creating other folders in Docusign. And this applies for .loop as well. You can create other headers and sections for .loop. But you can create multiple folders to organize your documents to make it easy for you to work. And this is what I want to focus on. So I'm going to create a folder in Docusign, and I'm going to call this signed docs. And I'll click create. So now I'm going to collapse these two folders, and now you can see there's the signed docs folder and there's a room docs folder. And with those two folders in command, I can specify where the documents are that I'm looking to pull into command. Now, right now, my signed doc folder is empty, and my room docs has 3 documents in it, but there's only one of those that can be brought into command, the red one, the PDF. The blue forms are only templates. You can't take that form and bring it into command. Let me prove it to you. If I come back to command, I'm going to refresh my page so that you can see here. And if I go over into, it says attach files from, it's already showing Docusign, but now it says where in Docusign, what folder are those documents. So I'm going to choose Room Docs. And when I do, all of the gray select buttons light up. And if I drop the arrow down here, look at this. There's only one document showing as visible in the Room Docs folder in Docusign, because that's the only one that's a PDF. The other 2 documents are Docusign forms. They're not going anywhere. They don't leave Docusign. Even if I was to choose the print option for one of these and say I want to print one of these forms out, it prints it as a PDF. It doesn't print it as the form, because the form is just a template. So that means that when you're in command and you're pulling documents from Docusign, you're only going to see PDFs. Which is why in Docusign, if you create that signed docs folder and you have the 2 in here, Room Docs and signed docs, then you could move the signed documents into the signed doc folder. And if you've got PDFs that are certifications or PDFs that are copies and first versions, and you only want to be able to look to find the legitimately signed documents that you want to manage, then put them into that signed docs folder. And when you're in command, I'll refresh again because it's going to look, you'll notice that the room docs is now empty. There's nothing here for me to pull because all of the signed docs are in the signed docs folder. And when I do that, there's my file that I need. So organizationally, I recommend this. .loop or Docusign, doesn't matter. I recommend you have 3 folders. Well, I will say .loop doesn't matter as much with this statement because it's a little bit different, but I recommend 3 folders: the standard room docs folder, the signed document folder, and the certifications. The certification folder is where you drop all of Docusign's certification documents. Okay. That way they're kept off to the side because we do not need those to be transferred to command. This is just the legal certifications should that ever come up in a conversation or a lawsuit where you need to show when somebody signed something. That legal certification can be used as a statement of this is when this person signed. You always get one with every single signature that is a signed document. So signed documents go in here because those go into command. Certifications can go into this folder as an archive for all of your certifications. Now, optionally, you could create a 4th folder in here. You could create a 3rd one leading to a total of 4. So you have your room docs, you have your signed docs, certifications, and you could have an unused folder. Like, it's not an archive because you can archive a document. I'm not talking about moving it off to the side and hiding it. I'm talking about putting it into like an unused area so that you keep things organized into another folder that isn't one of the 3. It's the other folder. And this can help you, again, keep this room clean and keep it so that you don't have to be fishing around. Because I'm going to be honest with you, when you're in here and this starts to get 40 documents, it doesn't matter how you look at it, whether you look at it in a table column or whether you're looking at it as this, it gets a lot. So organizing this and having a methodology will save you time. You know, if you're an existing agent and you're coming to us, you may find that your document management system works best for you and you have your way of doing things. Great. You probably can implement it here in some way to make that happen. If you're a new agent and you have no idea how this organization will impact you, ask an experienced agent and they'll tell you organization matters. Okay. So now that we know that, and we have, in my case here, I've got a certifications, a sign, and a room docs. When you're back in command, all you do is tell the system, well, let me refresh this again because it's going to need to see that new folder. You just tell the system the documents that I'm looking for are in the signed, or maybe, not that you're going to go there, but there's the certifications and then there's the room docs. So those are some key things to help you keep organized here. Now let's talk about some contingencies. I had an agent recently who had a situation, and we actually talked about it in the morning one morning on the quick start. A piece of property that was being sold, it had 2 addresses, like 123 and 124 Main Street. And in doing so, there were 2 separate deeds, but they were still on the same transaction. They were still working off the same transaction. And the question came about, do I need to create 2 opportunities? And the answer is no. You do not need to create 2 opportunities because there is an awesome tool in here called versions. For each of the folders in command, so Docusign, .loop aside, forget them for a minute. Inside of command, in the consultation folder, you can have versions or subfolders. Now, it doesn't visually look like a folder structure, But what you're doing here is if you had, let me pull in from the sign docs. I'm just going to keep this right here on top so you can see it. It's not the right document. Don't worry about it. It's not the right name or the right document. But what it is in the consultation folder in the required document under real estate brokerage relationship form, I pulled a document in. But what if I needed two of those? There's not a second slot for this. There isn't one underneath it that says, oh, if you need another one, just put it here. Now, you don't want to use the custom folder because there is a spot here for a type of document. And that's the rule for custom folders. Custom folders are not to be used if there is an existing spot for a folder for a type of document that you're loading up. You need to put it in there so compliance can find it. But there's only one spot. This is where versions come in. If you add a version, essentially you're creating a duplicate folder for the consultation. So I'll say add version, and we'll say consultation version 2. This will be for second property, or I don't like using the word property. Second deed, we'll call it that, or second address. Okay, this gives me a second folder that's got exactly the same objects, but now it's all wiped out. It's all clean. And I can add another document. So I'm going to cheat. You ready? I'm totally going to cheat here. I'm going to cheat because I'm going to bring in another document here. Totally cheating. This is a one-time showing. Okay, so come back over here and do this. Okay. Open house. Good. Perfect. Okay, so here's what I have. I have versions that I can pull down from this little drop down. So right now it says second deed. If I go back to my original consultation, so consultation, there is that open house disclosure. If I go back to my deed, my second deed one, I can pull in, I use the same document, so we'll kill that. And we'll pull in another one. Showing, yeah, perfect. So now I have a second one of these in its own little folder and its own little version. How many versions can you make? You're probably going to max out at 2 or 3. Anything more than that, you should probably call the broker and ask them the best way, or a compliance. Call compliance and ask them what the best way to handle that is if you've got that much going on. So the idea is you do not need to use custom folders. You're pretty much going to use versions to be able to do this. Now, one of the things that I did a training video on for compliance was they asked me to explain how versions work, how duplicate opportunities work, and what happens if you are doing a dual agency. So 3 major topics. Now, inside of our learning management system, our LMS at kwclmtraining.com, is that video. It is a little about 20 minutes or so long, and each section is broken down for you so you understand what dual agency is in terms of command and how it works, what versions are and how they work, and whether or not duplicate opportunities come into play. And I'm not going to get into the weeds on that one here because of the time here. I will tell you this, there's a lot going on. There's a lot to think about, and we can talk about it should those 3 things arise. Natasha asks, if an agent has contacts in another CRM software, can the info be uploaded into command in order to solely use command? Every single day I do that, Natasha. We can bring in your contacts from any of your third-party tools as long as they can get it to me in an Excel format so that I can work with it. A CSV, text export, whatever you want to call it. If we can export it out of your previous CRM, we can import it into command to make your life easy. Okay, so let's finish up this versions thing. Notice here that in the consultation folder, I have 2 subfolders. I've got the original consultation and one called second deed. In the under contract folder, that top level folder, I can make subfolders, but it doesn't bring the other one over there because these are separate folders, separate documents, separate document types, separate folders. So you can use versions in each of the 3 folders on the left to organize your documents. Don't worry if you feel like there's a lot of documents that you need to put in here and you're not sure where. The best way to understand this is that this is pre-contract, this is contract, and this is post-closing. If I go to the post-closing here and I look, settlement statement, a new deed, copy of the commission check. This is all after closing. The main stuff that you're doing is happening in the consultation and the under contract. Those are the two areas that you're going to be focusing. In each of those areas, and you'll see here that I've added a document into this slot. Yes, it's the wrong name. But now I have this little thing over here on the left that says open. That means that this has not been submitted to the Market Center for compliance to review it. And in that case, you would want to hit submit to Market Center. And then it would show as submitted, awaiting approval. If they reject it, if there's an issue with it and they return it to you, or if they approve it, you're going to see notifications for each one of these under status. You will see approved, rejected, returned, and they're going to give you reasons. And those reasons are going to be available in this little box, add comment, or there'll be a little one down here with a little comment icon, and they're going to talk to you. They're going to inform you. You're not going to get a rejected with no notification of what's wrong. They're going to tell you. They want it to work, so they're going to tell you, hey, this is rejected because do this to fix it, and we'll be good to go. If you want to talk to compliance, you can click that add comment button. If you're like stuck on something and you're like, you know what? I should probably ask compliance. Fine. Click add comment. And down here in the enter your message, put an @ symbol. And you'll be able to choose Jason Westcott, Jennifer Vachon. You can even @ Nathan Dickey and say, hey, Nate, I got a question, man. You should probably start, with the proper chain of events here, but Jason Westcott, the broker, assistant broker, the Jennifer Vachon, our broker, Kaylee Brackett, our MCA, Jason Houle, compliance, Tristan, our other broker, our other MCA, Colin D'Agostino. Everybody's in here. Everybody that you need is in here. So if that's the case, then come in here and choose a person, say, hey, Jason, question. And put your question in here. And I'm going to tell him not to answer because I'm going to send this. I'm going to say, boom, it pops it up here. And so now Jason is going to receive this on his notification bell and his email. And he's going to read that and go, why is Robert sending me a stupid, goofy little thing? And he might even reply back to this, but he'll probably just not. He'll probably just ignore it. But compliance will not ignore it. They're going to see that, and that's your fastest way to talk to them. They live in this. They're in here all day long. This isn't one of those things where, oh yeah, I didn't check command today. I wasn't around. This is what they're doing all day long. Got a question? Add a comment and check it out. Over here on the left, there's a new comment balloon next to the open button where you can click that and it will show you your current comments for that. And by the way, there is only one comment balloon. There's not a separate section for questions for under contract or close. This is going to be the comments. It's going to be all comments are in one place. So use that as a tool to communicate. Use versions when you have multiple versions of the same documents, or here's another example of a version. This is great because Tiffany, this is a buyer opportunity. So this works. If Jackie Astuto is my buyer and we go to put an offer in on a house and our house is 123 Main Street and that offer is rejected and Jackie Astuto turns to me and says, all right, Tiffany, let's go look at 456 South Street. When you come in here, you're going to create a new set of documents for 456 South Street, but only the documents that need to change because of the address. Your brokerage relationship form and all the standard stuff that doesn't reflect the property is going to stay the same. But all of the stuff that's in there for that first document, you don't want to dump that all out there and go remove. You just come up here and go new version, second offer, 456 South Street. And you load up all the documents for 456 South Street. And when compliance gets it, they're going to look in here And they're going to see the first one was a dead deal. Didn't happen. The second one for 4, 5, 6, that's where they're going to focus their efforts. And how are they going to know that? You're going to add a comment and you're going to put in here at Colin, and you're going to say, hey, Colin, the first deal at 123 Main Street didn't go through. I added a second version for 456 South Street. All the documentation referring to that is in there. Please see the first version for anything that does not impact the property, like anything that's not property related. So you won't have to put double the documents in there. You'll only need to put documents that reference the new transaction, saving you tons of time. That makes sense, Tiffany?
What do we do with all the other documents so we
They're
don't
right
keep
here.
seeing?
They will be in the first section here. They'll be part of the history of the transaction, but they're not going to be used as the closing information. So they're just going to be, it's kind of a pseudo soft archive, because you will always be able to go back and look at the first version that didn't go through. And you can always go and look at the second one, and whichever one was the one that actually worked is what you're going to be using. So it's a way for you to not have to create another transaction, to not have to have another set of documents for baseline documents that don't require, the property address. So it's a one-stop shop, and it cleans your database, because now your database doesn't have 17 opportunities for 17 failed offers. You have one transaction, and in that transaction, you have 17 versions inside of it, but you only have one master transaction. So now, when you're ready to submit it to the Market Center, you're going to hit submit. And when you submit it to the Market Center, Tristan is going to see it, or Kaylee is going to see it, and they're going to start going through it. If they have questions for you, they're going to reach out to you. If you have questions for them, use the add comment. They're on the same list as well. Once the transactions are closed up and buttoned up, you're going to see approved, and you're going to see everything's all green across the board. At that point, if that point coincides with the closing and you're going to submit for your commissions, then you can just jump right into the offers and commissions. If you have not completed all your documentation on this screen, you can still move to the offers and commissions tab, and you can create the offer and submit, or get your commissions ready. But know this, if the documents tab is not fully dialed in, and Tristan has not verified through compliance that everything's good, because he checks before he goes to pay you, he calls up Colin and says, hey, Colin, so-and-so is submitting a transaction for this. Are we good to go? Yes. He looks in there. It's good to go. Colin confirms it's good to go. He'll pay you. If there's a problem, you're going to have to wait until the cleared up for them to pay you. Natasha asks, if the previous property the buyer was interested in did not go through. Yeah, for any reason, Natasha, if there's property number 1, if that falls through, whether backouts or, they chose somebody else, the lost offers, whatever, that's version 1. Version 2 is for the second property. Some of the documentation that you used in version 1, you don't need to redo because it's all fine. But anything else, new contracts, new offers, everything is going to go in version 2. Okay. So I'm going to pause here now, and we're going to see if I have any questions.
So we'll have to keep going back from version 1 to version 2, though, depending on what form we need or want.
No, it's always, think of it as a going forward. Don't think of it as going back. If you have let's say for a consultation, the brokerage relationship form, once that's filled out, that's good through all versions. It's good through all versions. So you don't need to come back to version 1, get it, and then put it in version 2. You don't need to do that. Just leave it in version 1. They'll know that the brokerage relationship form was the original. It's in version 1. It's all good to go. It's approved. It's all done. Okay. But in version...
Now, will this... Sorry.
Go ahead.
Will this say, like, the drop down, will it say second PNS, or will it say version 2? Or
Ah, that's up to you.
oh, okay.
That's up to you because what you call it here matters. So you're not going to have, and this is why folders in Docusign work as well. Because if you're doing in Docusign and you want to keep, property address number 123 Main Street, create another folder for property address 456. And then that way, inside property address for the second one, I would definitely make sure that, let's say we're, well, the wire fraud's a bad one. Whatever the document is that references the second property, change the name of that document to reference, second property, 456 Main Street, whatever you want to call it. That way, that when you're going to find this document to pull it into command, you're looking at the right version. So the documents are going to be handled by you. The slots are handled by the system. Good question. So Natasha asks, so no new opportunity is required for the new address. This gets into where I was saying that we have a video, and I'm going to bring that video so that you guys can see it here. We're not going to watch it, but I'm going to bring this up here. I'll even go to kwtechtube.com because it's also there. It's in our LMS and it's on our YouTube channel. So I'm going to go to kwtechtube.com and I'm going to go into search, and I'm going to search for compliance, because we have one video called KWCLM Compliance Update July 2021. So we did this because it had been a while since people had understood what to do. So I'll put the video link in two places. I'm going to put it for you on Zoom. There you go. There's the link to the YouTube video there. And for you guys over on Facebook, which one is that? That is going to be this one. I'm going to put that link in the comments for you, Natasha. There we go. Compliance. Okay, so now you guys all have it. So this video explains that there is kind of a lifespan of a transaction. So Jackie Estudo, let's say she signed on with me January 1st. Nice, easy number. And on January 1st, we signed a deal and we've been working together for a month or so. And then she put offers in on one house and it was rejected. Now, if she comes back to me in March or April and says, "Hey, let's go ahead and look at this second property. I like this second property that you're showing me, and we're gonna look at a second property." You do not need to create a new transaction because you have your initial transaction set up with her. You've got a file going, and you're like, "Okay, so this is just the second property, second version." However, if Jackie says to you in September, "You know what? I'm going to wait till next year." There's a lifespan of how long the contract for the brokerage relationship kind of exists. You're going to kind of want to work that out because at some point you're going to need to sign a new contract. And if that's the case, then leave this one aside and create a new opportunity for a year later. So it really comes down to, did they say that they were going to continue to look after the first loss? Or did they say, "You know what, I'm out. I'm out of the market," and a year later they come back to you? That's a new transaction. But if it's kind of like, we've been working on 3 or 4 houses, it's taken us 6 months, you're still rolling that ball down the hill. Does that make sense? All right. We have closed this out. D, you haven't asked me a question. You good?
It's because I'm writing it all down.
All right. Well, the video is going to be available on YouTube. It's actually on YouTube as we speak. It's going to be something you can come back to later and goes through a little bit more slowly than my speedy talk here. But keep in mind that the documentation management process happens in 2 basic places. It happens on the Documents tab, and it happens in your signing tool, Docusign or .loop. Organizing those tools to make your life easier is going to make everything better. The most important part of that is, though, when you're creating the opportunity, do everything you can to get the details tab of that opportunity as squared away as possible so that your life becomes easier down the line. All right, that's going to do it for me here. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, and I'll put this up on the screen here, command@kwclm.com. That's where you can reach me for on my email. And if you want to reach me on the YouTube channel, you can always go visit the YouTube channel at kwtechtube.com. The calendar for my time is timewithrobert.com. The Tech Lab, which is where you are now if you're on the Zoom, is KW Tech TV. Facebook training feed is facebook.com/mctt463. That's all the classes in order. And of course, kwclmtraining.com is the LMS where you can get a lot of this other good information as well. All right, so that's going to cover it. That's going to do it for us here. I hope you guys got some good stuff, and we're going to be coming back at 3 o'clock today for the final class of the day. And I'm trying to remember what I was going to talk about, and I can't remember what it was because I don't.
Can you send an email or a picture of all those websites, please?
Guess what?
Mm.
It's in my contact information in your database.
Oh, okay.
All those links
Thank you.
are inside. When I send out the contact information from me and it's put inside your database, you guys have access to all that good stuff. So just look me up in your database, go down to the bottom, and all the links are there. All right. Like I said, I forgot what the third class for today was. It is going to be, I'll tell you what, let's cheat. I'm going to cheat. It's creating your Facebook business pages. That's what it is.
I thought it was
So-
Command 301, it says.
Yep. Command 301, Facebook business
Oh.
page in 1 hour. We'll see you there. Talk to you guys in a little bit.